Is there anybody that'd like to change or add to the agenda today?
President Preiner, staff would like to make an addition under informational updates, or items for discussion and information. So a new item 1 there, informational item, legislative event mod. And I believe Teresa handed out an item for us to check on there.
Okay, anything else? Now I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the agenda with the addition.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes?
Aye.
Madam Chair, I move approval of the January 26, 2022 regular meeting of the Rice Creek Watershed Board of Managers.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the consent agenda. I believe Patrick had a comment.
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers, on the consent agenda today for permit application 21-115, on page 27 of the packet, there are 2 items that we'd like to add there under administrative. We would look for a new number 3 and a new number 4. These are related to maintenance of the proposed stormwater BMP, and I can read the language here. So the new number 3, the applicant must submit a draft declaration for maintenance of stormwater management facilities acceptable to the district for proposed on-site stormwater management and pretreatment features. And then the new number 4 would also relate to that, and it would be the applicant must provide an attested copy of any and all signed and notarized legal documents from the county recorder. Applicant may wish to contact the county recorder to determine recordation requirements prior to recordation. If you want to see it written out, it's the same as one of the other applications. Page 33 has them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, with that, we still are on the consent agenda. Anybody like to bring anything else up? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move to cap rock permit number 17-122, 21-115, and 21-134.
I'll second that.
With
Oh, I'm sorry.
one's amended.
Okay.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, water quality grant. That'd be Lauren. Good morning, Lauren.
Morning, President Preiner, Board of Managers.
President Preiner, it's consent agenda, so if
So we really don't need any further discussion. Okay.
Lauren's available if you do have any questions on those items.
Anybody have any questions for Lauren?
I do have a comment about this. Do you want a motion first? Or?
Let's go a motion. And
Okay, I would move, so what do we got here?
It's just a consent agenda for, A22.
Okay, I would move the projects A22-1 and R22-1 of the Water Quality Grant Program, cost share.
I'll second it for discussion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, on page 49, Lauren, this is for the Turtle Lake project. Explain again that you are making payments directly to the contractor as opposed to the landowner.
Sure. Board of Managers, Manager Wynant. This was a revised reimbursement method that the board approved me going ahead with at a previous workshop. I believe that was in 2019 or so. And this is the difference with this method is that instead of us simply providing reimbursement to a landowner for the project and they being responsible for the entire cost of the project up front, This option allows for the landowner to only pay their project match to the contractor, and then we would provide the remaining amount, our grant award amount, directly to the contractor. So that reduces the upfront cost for the landowner, and that has been helpful for some landowners who were concerned with providing, let's say, $10,000 for a project upfront, or for this project, $23,000 upfront. That can be quite a lot for a landowner, and so we found that it's so far been helpful in allowing for the projects to occur.
Okay, and then secondly, it looks like that portion of the lake, the shoreland, is getting a lot of attention. So being able to see your neighbor do something and then have the option available to you
Understand it enough to, yeah.
starts moving along. So great.
Yes, Manager Winan, it did start with a Minnesota water steward who lives in the area. She started one of the projects she influenced to occur, and then after that, in 2019, we had 5 neighbors go through and do a shoreline and shoreline restoration and stabilization project, all simultaneously with the same contractor. And since then, we keep seeing additional neighbors interested. So it's been great to see that in action of how people can be influenced by seeing examples of projects.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're going to go in.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Lauren.
Yeah, thank you.
Into our public hearing. So the regular board meeting is now recessed, and the public hearing is open on the Rice Creek Watershed District's proposed selection of projects for funding through the district's Stormwater Management Grant Program. In accordance with state law, notice of this hearing was published for 2 successive weeks in the St. Paul Pioneer Press and mailed to all cities within the Watershed District, as well as District 4 counties. I ask that those of you in attendance remotely mute your microphone until it's your turn to speak. The purpose of this hearing is to receive comments from the public on the projects that the board is considering for cost share assistance in the cities of Arden Hills, Fridley, New Brighton, Roseville, White Bear Township, and Ramsey and Washington counties. Before the Watershed District can provide funds for capital work for these applicants, state law requires that the Board of Managers hold a public hearing, receive public comment, and make judgment that each selected project is a sound and cost-effective project to help fulfill our water resource goals. First of all, I'd like to invite Kyle Axel, District Project Manager, to give a brief presentation on the proposed projects. When his remarks are completed, the floor will be open for any members of the public who wish to address the board. For those who are joining in person, please come forward to the podium, and for those who are joining us remotely, please ask to be recognized and address the board when I recognize you. Speak clearly and state your name and address for the record. If you have any written copy of your statement or any other documents that you would like to submit, please inform the board. District staff will provide direction on how to submit materials for the record. During public comment, managers are welcome to ask questions of commenters to clarify the remarks. I also ask that Mr. Axel or representatives of project applicants to respond to any technical questions raised. Managers will hold their own comments about the project until the public hearing is closed. At that time, the board will have the opportunity to discuss the project's board action to select projects for funding. It's temporarily scheduled for February 23rd, 2022 at our regular meeting. Kyle, would you like to proceed?
Madam President, board members, I will do so. Again, this public hearing, we're looking at our stormwater management grants under Minnesota Statute 103B 251. If this will go. There we go. So the presentation, I'll try and make this as brief as possible while covering the 10 applications received. We'll take a quick peek at the program goals as well as the 2022 program guidelines, and then I'll run through each of the 10 applications that were received. And next steps were just mentioned with potential action at our next board meeting on February 23rd. So the Stormwater Management Grant Program itself exists to encourage local government units and others within the district to explore stormwater quality and quantity retrofit opportunities and incorporate those into development and infrastructure projects. We aim to foster closer collaboration between our partners on stormwater quality and quantity improvement efforts. We also look to foster stormwater management innovation and create demonstration and education examples where possible, as well as defraying the local costs in the broader watershed-wide interest of improving water quality and decreasing flood damage risk. This year, for the 2022 funding year, applications were due December 22nd, 2021. We had advertised a total of $300,000 available for project cost sharing in 2022, with a maximum grant of $100,000 per project. We have a different formula for stormwater reuse irrigation projects. I'll note there were no reuse applications for 2022. These grants do require a 50% match by the applicant. As I mentioned, we had 10 applications received from 7 different applicants requesting a total of $677,000 and change. And we'll start to run through them here. I've got a map here to show you generally the location of our 10 applications. This year they did happen to all be in the southern half of the watershed, although that is not typical. But we do have applications from Anoka, Ramsey, and Washington counties. So we'll run through these alphabetically by applicant, not in any order of preference. The City of Arden Hills, Arden Manor East Pond Restoration Project. This would propose to expand an existing pond, lower its normal water level, and enlarge the pond outlet to reduce flood damage risk within a mobile home park. This is at Arden Manor Park. And I'll show you a map here soon. This is just upstream of Round Lake. The total project cost is just over $270,000. The applicant requested, I think, 90% of that amount. That was must have been an error, but the maximum request would be $100,000. There are no water quality benefits provided, so that's unknown for this project. It's primarily promoted as a flood control project, adding 3/4 of an acre foot of new live storage to the pond and 70% shorter flood duration. I will note there is, the eligibility of this project is unknown at this time. There may be regulatory hurdles with the project. The pond in question is very likely a regulated wetland, and the project also, I don't know why that's showing down there, there's shows an increase to downstream peak runoff rate. So this is the pond within the mobile home park. This is kind of near the triangle, if you will, between 35W, 694, and Highway 10, just kind of near TCAP there. And so you can see it's they're proposing an excavation and enlargement of this pond here with an enlarged outlet under this road here.
Madam President. Kyle, thank you, Madam President. Kyle, would you tell me how many mobile homes are in the park approximately?
I do not have an answer to that.
There's
Many.
Many.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. It is a site where there has been documented flood damage in the past.
Thank you.
City of Fridley, their application is the Far Lake and Danube Pond Pretreatment Project. This project proposes installation of 14 sumped catch basins with saffle baffles and floatable skimmers throughout a neighborhood surrounding Far Lake to reduce sediment and nutrient loading to, there's really a variety of public water wetlands tucked in that neighborhood. Target water bodies, again, are Far Lake, and then the area in aggregate discharges to, downstream to East Moore Lake, which is impaired. Total project cost is $290,000, and the city is requesting a $100,000 grant. The water quality benefits shown in the application are 32 pounds of phosphorus annually and a little over 3 tons of sediment. And I do have a flag on here. We do, that phosphorus reduction estimate is likely quite higher than normal. And staff review would say probably 3 to 4 pounds of phosphorus a year is more likely to be accurate.
Manager Wageman?
Kyle, could you just remind me what a saffle baffle actually is?
Sure, will do, Manager Wagaman. So a saffle baffle is a structure that's installed in a catch basin or in a manhole perpendicular to the flow of water.
Okay.
And it helps to, if you will, break up that flow and drop sediment into the sump. So it makes a sump catch basin more effective as a means for capturing sediment and
Thank you.
trash and particles and stuff.
And I would like one question too. So they have a very high estimate, and so
Yes.
would we be granting that based on their estimate? And then at what time do we find out what the actuals are?
Right.
Do we go back in 2 years and say, well, it was really one, not, you know?
Yeah.
Good question. I would say during our reviews, certainly staff noted it, and we scored accordingly. Imagine the engineer does as well. And so that'll come out at our next meeting when we go through the reviews. But that is a question that we would like the city to respond to.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Okay.
Continue.
And on the map here, you can see Far Lake is kind of in the center of the neighborhood here, and all of these green dots around here, I believe there's 14 of them, are where those manholes are located.
I guess I do have one question about that one.
Mhm.
So is this a real lake?
It is a public water wetland, technically. It is a DNR protected public water. It is called Far Lake. It is one of a large number of what I would call pothole lakes over in the Fridley, New Brighton, Roseville area of the watershed.
Okay, but recognized by the DNR.
Correct.
All right, thank
As a
you.
wetland.
As a wetland.
As a wetland.
As many of them are. City of New Brighton, proposing their Public Works facility, I can't see the title on here, let me move this. Public Works Facility Flood Mitigation Project. I'll make that go away. Best I can do. And this proposes a new dry pond at the city Public Works facility. It's a little over 11,000 cubic feet in size, with a reduced outlet diameter to act as a retention basin in an area that has been prone to flooding in the past. The project would store existing runoff volume, decrease peak runoff rate to Ramsey County Ditch 2, and reduce flood damage risk to some adjacent private property south of Public Works. Project cost is estimated at $206,000 and change, and the city is requesting a $100,000 grant. Again, they're not advertising this as a water quality project, although likely some sediment would be removed by the BMP. Mostly it's a flood control project with a little over a quarter acre foot of new live storage and a peak flow reduction of, I don't know why that's there, but it's about a little over 10 cubic feet per second reduction in peak flow rate for the 100-year event. I will note this is a site that was identified in our Ramsey County Ditches 2, 3, and 5 basic water management petition process. And the city is proposing, as you can see, this pond here in an open area on this city property. The area that floods is south of this image, south of 5th Street. All right. City of Roseville is proposing their County Road C2 and Simpson Street underground infiltration project. And this would propose a new underground infiltration gallery, pipe gallery, beneath Simpson Street to provide volume control. This is an infiltration project, and reduce flood damage risk to private property in the area. It would be 3 rows of 250-foot long pipes that are 60 inches in diameter and perforated, again, to allow for some infiltration. This is upstream of Little Lake Johanna in RCD 4. Total project cost is $218,000 and change, and they're requesting a $100,000 grant. Project is estimated to remove 2.2 pounds of phosphorus per year. Sediment estimate was not provided. About 0.2 of an acre foot of volume control, live volume control is associated with the storage volume of the pipes, and the flood control benefit in total adds 0.426 acre feet of new live storage volume beneath the street. And this figure just shows the location of that gallery underneath the east side of Simpson Street here at County Road C2. Ramsey County, this is the first of 3 applications submitted by Ramsey County. This is for another Saffle Baffle at Bald Eagle Boulevard. And this would be a new summed catch basin with a Saffle Baffle, again, to reduce sediment and nutrient load to Bald Eagle Lake. The total project cost is estimated at $54,000, and the county is requesting $27,000 and change for the project, a 50% grant. On all of their applications, the county did not focus on the phosphorus removal. They provided a sediment removal estimate for each of these, about 2.6 tons per year. And again, just associated with that, staff would expect a roughly 2 to 3 pound total phosphorus reduction along with that BMP. So where this is at where Bald Eagle Avenue and Bald Eagle Boulevard West meet, the lake is just off the Bald Eagle Boulevard there, and they would propose to replace this existing manhole with a sumped catch basin with that baffle as I described earlier. So similar project to the city of Fridley, although just one site instead of 14. Second application from Ramsey County. This is Old Snelling at Lake Valentine Road Grit Chamber. Their proposal is to restore the functionality and maintenance schedule of an abandoned grit chamber as part of routine storm sewer replacement. This is off the shore of Lake Valentine at Old Snelling Road. Old Snelling Road and Lake Valentine Road. The total project cost they have listed at $364,000. That does include primarily it's storm sewer replacement that the county is doing in that area. They've requested $50,000. They have a sediment reduction estimate of 3.78 tons. I will note that this project is likely ineligible for funding through this program as it appears to simply be maintenance of an existing BMP. My understanding of the history, talking with the county, is that, as you can see, where Lake Valentine Road comes down to Old Snelling here, there's this large, if you will, large sump, a large underground grit chamber box. I don't have a lot of detail on it. That at one point maybe was turned over to the city when Lake Valentine Road was turned over. There's not a lot of knowledge of who was responsible to maintain the structure, and it has not been maintained for years. The county is taking that back over officially, and will be cleaning it out and reconnecting it to the storm sewer in the area that is in need of replacement. But again, we view this largely as a maintenance project. Third application from Ramsey County. This is Silver Lake Road at Rice Creek, stabilization project. And they're proposing to replace the entire stormwater outfall configuration at this road crossing of Rice Creek, reducing the number of outfalls to the creek from 4 to 2. So they're combining storm sewer into, again, fewer outfalls. And then at the end of each of those, they would add a sumped catch basin with baffles to reduce that sediment load and to the creek. Along with that, they'll be regrading and stabilizing the eroded embankments around that road crossing with riprap. Total project cost is just under $289,000, and the county is requesting a $100,000 grant. They've estimated a sediment reduction of 1.82 tons per year. Again, staff review, we feel that might be low. It doesn't really account for the embankment stabilization and the correction of those erosion conditions. The estimate is just for the new baffle and sump configurations. On the drawing here, you can see they're again putting in new catch basins and storm sewer under the road, running everything to the east side of the road where it would discharge through that sumped manhole with a catch basin. So there would only be 2 outfalls to the creek here, where currently there's basically 1 on each corner. And then all of these other areas are slated for stabilization. Washington County's application for the County Road 12 improvement project. As you may be aware, the MnDOT has turned back what was part of State Highway 244 to Washington County. This is really from the county line, if you will, down to Willerton through Lost Lake. And as the county is preparing to make some improvements to that roadway next year, they are applying to install a multi-cell infiltration basin be on the south side of the road to intercept runoff from County Highway 12 prior to its outfall into be the south basin of Lost Lake. A large portion of this project is required to comply with Rice Creek Rule C and our stormwater management requirements. The project cost is just over $95,000, and that's why you see the smaller cost share request of around $9,000. The BMP has been oversized to as much as they can to fit in what is really kind of a tight work area. And so there's a prorated portion of the project that's eligible for cost share consideration. Water quality benefits are 6.3 pounds of phosphorus per year, and the sediment reduction is estimated at 1.5 tons. So here's the location of the project, again, off the south side of, or what is or will be County Highway 12. And there's kind of an existing ravine down through here currently, and that area would be reconstructed and converted into again, a multi-cell infiltration basin network. These basins would be provided with a drain tile underneath with valves, so that in the future, if they needed to be converted to biofiltration, if infiltration wasn't working real well, there's an option to modify that BMP in the future. White Bear Township, this is the first of 2 applications from the township, Bel Air Park pond cleaning. This involves sediment removal and reestablishment of the original design of a stormwater pond along County Road F. Project cost estimate is just over $53,000. The township has requested half of that amount in the grant. This project, again, is a maintenance project and likely ineligible for funding. And the pond in question was actually previously cost shared by Rice Creek in 2009 as a part of this program. So maintenance of this BMP is required. But for benefit here, here's the pond itself. That's the original grading plan that they'd be restoring. Clearly, the pond has been doing its job, and I think that's one thing that's important to note, as it has filled in heavily with sediment coming off of County Road F. So maintenance is certainly due. Second application from White Bear Township. This is the maintenance of a railroad ditch along the Canadian Pacific Railroad. And they'd be looking to reestablish the profile of this ditch to provide some flood damage risk reduction to properties south of the railroad that are actually in the city of White Bear Lake. Project cost estimate is $129,000. They've requested half of that amount. The application doesn't really identify any water quality benefits and does not quantify the flood control benefit. Further, again, it's maintenance of an existing private ditch, and we feel the project is likely ineligible for funding through this program. Flows through the ditch, currently discharged to the pond we recently completed on Ramsey County Ditch 11 as a part of the Iron Enhanced Sand Filter project. So this is the location of the project as proposed. This ditch kind of, again, runs along the railroad here to our pond on Ditch 11, and it drains this larger hatched area here, which is in the city of White Bear Lake, primarily. So those are the applications. Again, happy to take any questions from the board or the public at this time. We can have a more thorough review at the next board meeting when we would be scheduled for action.
Yes, I do have one question generally, which is a little concerning, is that when we look at the water control and the flood control, and they have no impact benefit, why would the watershed be funding these projects? I guess that's what we're looking for, and if that's a zero and they don't provide numbers, I don't know how we should be expected to do it. That's just a general statement to think about, so you don't have to answer that today.
I do have a couple questions here.
Okay.
And let me ask the questions and you can answer them in any order. 300,000, that's that's levied funds, and I guess the question is 300,000 went up 400,000. Where did the 300,000 come from? And I see here that yes, these are reviewed by the CAC, so they've already taken a look at them and done the ordered.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll go over
you have
that
next time.
fancy Excel sheet that I recall that, right, okay,
We'll go
good.
over that at the next meeting.
There was mention, some of the projects were included in the water plan, and if we did approve a project that was not mentioned in the water plan, do we have to revise the water plan to make that for eligibility? And then the last one is that, as you noted, several of these projects you've said are probably ineligible. So probably to Pat's comment, are the qualifications for the grant written in such a way that these communities should not have even spent the time to apply?
Okay, I'll try and
All right.
tackle those three questions.
Okay.
The first regarding the funding levels. The funding levels for this particular program are established, the maximum is established in our watershed management plan.
Okay.
So the grant program is considered a capital improvement project of the district, whereby we work with our partners to implement capital improvements across the watershed that meet our goals. To the second question, they may not be in our Appendix G or the local plan projects. Certainly, projects that are in that appendix or have been identified or are in city local water plans, they have an opportunity to maybe score a little better, in the reviews than projects that aren't. But projects, if they're not listed, that doesn't make them ineligible.
Okay.
And that's part of the reason that we have this public hearing here as a process for ordering projects under the watershed plan under 103B 251. And it does allow us to fund projects, again, through this program as a part of the watershed plan. The last question regarding the applicants, I do as much outreach as I can to our prospective applicants, encouraging folks to talk to me before applications come in. Sometimes that happens and sometimes that doesn't. And often we receive, probably 9 of these applications came in, I think, on the deadline, so at the day. So didn't have a lot of opportunity to have much back and forth with several applicants. So
Thank you.
Madam President,
Yes.
so I'd add to your answer, Kyle, that the staff has been very diligent in looking at all of these projects and the eligibility, and if the eligibility may not have necessarily fit under this particular grant program, that's what he's saying. When it's ineligible for this particular program, but fit under another program, then that consideration has been mentioned, and we'll talk more about that at the next meeting. So my point here is that the staff has been very responsible, and I support them on their efforts to make sure that these programs, these requests are funded. If they're eligible, not necessarily for this program, but maybe another one, then they've pointed that out, and that's what took place at the Citizens Advisory Committee. So you did a very good job, and I appreciate your extra efforts for you and all the rest of the staff, because the point here is to make sure that we provide some capital improvements to stormwater and water quality. And
Okay, we have to go ahead and invite the public in. If there's, seeing none in the room, we'll see if there's anybody out there online that would like to make comment. Please identify yourself if you do. Anybody out there?
Looked like we had someone from the Ramsey Water.
Anybody out there that'd like to comment today? Okay, hearing none, we're going to go ahead and close this hearing. There's being no further testimony. We have no public that is here today or online. So I will go ahead and close the meeting and open the matter for board discussion if we're ready for that. Thank you, Kyle. Okay, so I believe we're not discussing till the 20, whatever date that was. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and start with our number 1 items requiring board action. Nick?
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers, the district bylaws require that annual designation of official depository and newspaper that is to occur at the first regular meeting in February. Here we are. The district's official depository is PMA Financial Network, LLC. They're administering the 4M fund for us with U.S. Bank as the financial institution, and the district's official newspaper is the St. Paul Pioneer Press. Staff recommend no changes to that. And on page 148 of your packet, you'll see a proposed motion.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Madam President, I move to designate PMA Financial Network LLC administering the 4M Fund with U.S. Bank as a financial institution as the official depository and St. Paul Pioneer Press, the official newspaper of the Rice Creek Watershed District.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2.
Yes, President Preiner, this is the Water Quality Grant Program contract extension for the Miron application. Lauren is going to address this item.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Nick. President Preiner, Board of Managers, as Nick said, for your consideration is a Water Quality Grant Program contract extension request that starts on page 150 in your packets. In August of 2020, the board approved a water quality grant W2002 for an agricultural waste storage facility and diversion project in Hugo and allocated $30,000 towards the project, which has a total cost estimate of $272,299. The landowner unfortunately was unable to secure NRCS funding last year to help cover some of his project match, which impacted the initiation of project construction. The project hasn't undergone any construction yet, and the grant award has not been spent. The grant contract for this project already expires this month on the 12th. And water quality grant contracts go for 18 months from the board approval date. A NRCS representative did communicate that the landowner has a higher chance of receiving NRCS funding this year. And so the landowner requests an extension to the water quality grant contract into 2023. Staff and Washington Conservation District support an extension of the water quality grant contract for another 18 months through August 9th of 2023. And this would allow for additional time for the landowner to secure other funding to help cover his project match, as well as more time for construction of the project. There is a proposed amended contract with a revised expiration date of August 9th, 2023 in your packets starting on page 151. And there is a proposed motion at the bottom of page 150. Are there any questions on this request?
I do have a question in general. Do we have a policy as to how many extensions we provide, or does it not matter, or do we just do it person by person?
President Preiner, I don't believe we do. I'm not aware of an existing policy of how many extensions. I know that I believe there were 3 for that, the grant contract with the city of Mounds View for that Lambert Avenue project that Kyle was working on through the Stormwater Management Grant Program. But I don't believe we have any policy right now that says how many a project could get. I think it's...
Yeah, to add to my question, my thought was, if we're holding the money, could it go to other applicants and then come back to that? I'm just trying to think of the money sitting there for 2 years that could have been used.
Sure.
Your question?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Nick?
You just asked it.
President Preiner, Board of Managers, to add to the discussion here. Lauren is correct. There is no policy the district has. It's been handled case by case, and the unique circumstances of each or the need for an additional extension has always come to you with the circumstance at that time. As far as the dollars, you know that the district is required to hold a 40% fund balance. We also have some additional funds beyond that, and we do capture these outstanding commitments of the district in that area. So, and each year we include in the budget a line item, an amount for the board to consider for this program. And so it is, I guess, just rolling along, but I wouldn't say it undermines the ability of others to utilize the dollars or with them to put a practical use, because they are if I might, a minuscule amount of the overall 40%.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about, because this is kind of a lot of the money, and we could maybe do 2 or smaller projects in between,
Yeah.
you know.
And there is a finite amount of money in that fund, right, to be used for this type of project. So that is $100,000 that is not used, that can't be used for the next year.
Yeah,
that could be
30,000.
used.
30,000.
30,000.
Or 30,000, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what I'm getting at is at the end of the year, we could have tied up money for 2.5 years that ends up a project not even going forward. And I
Yep.
mean, my question was on Pat, piggybacking on Pat's is, should they be coming back and reapplying when they determine if they're gonna do the project, so we're not holding up funds from a
Yeah.
program for 3 years that may never come to fruition.
Sure. President Preiner, a couple of thoughts there. Each year you've allocated 200,000, most recently 250,000 to the program, and you've been successful in allocating those dollars across everyone. So there is interest in it. Here I'd say there is unique to our experience with the program. This is an ag project, which is often absent in application, so it's a little bit unique, and it's been an effort of Lauren's as in administering the program to see that be successful. As you noted on the water quality programs, when you have an success on the landscape, it may cause for more interest in that area. So food for thought, I'll say there.
Lauren, you had a comment?
Yes, if I may, President Preiner, Board of Managers. So far, there hasn't been a concern of not having enough for another project in Washington County, as the demand in Washington County has been lower than what I'd like to see, and that's something that I've been working on with the ag effort, is trying to increase interest in projects in Washington County. So far, the $30,000 that we've allocated for this project hasn't been needed for other projects.
Okay.
Well, the only thing I can say is that if it is needed for another project, and we see, when we give this 18-month extension, we would have time to have funding at the end of that 18 months. We wouldn't need to hold up another project because this funding is held out. That's my,
Correct.
That was, yeah, that
That's
was
my
my,
concern.
exactly.
Yeah.
That was the same thing I was thinking.
so I don't know if there's a way that we have to do that or say that, or I just want to be, if somebody comes in and then, this is 18 months away again, so.
Sure.
No. And I'm sure we'd have funding at that time to fund it, so. Anyway, that was just my
Madam
thoughts.
President, I'd also point out that the last year or so, we've had this COVID situation, and not all government units, as the Watershed District has been, are as efficient. In my experience of kind of dealing with the federal government's point of view, because I'm an ag producer, operator, is that they are a little bit behind the score there, I guess. And that's been my experience with dealing with them for other areas that are not necessarily agriculture. So I think there's some other circumstances involved in this particular grant situation, and I expect that the federal government will catch up, and as the staff has pointed out, that it'll be available soon.
Well, yeah, and I'm not talking about just this situation, I'm talking in general, carrying our money to make it the most efficient. So that's,
Yeah,
if anybody wants to make a motion, they're fine to do so. It was just a comment.
Well, Madam President, I'll move to amend the W20-02 Water Quality Grant Program contract between the Rice Creek Watershed District and Fran Muron by extending the expiration date to August 9, 2023, and authorize the board president to sign.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Kyle.
President Preiner, Board of Managers, for your consideration today.
We have received quotes from contractors for the replacement of the Preview Lake outlet structure. And consistent with Minnesota's Uniform Municipal Contracting Law, we did release a request for quotes. The project was expected to be between $25,000 and $175,000, so this did not follow a sealed bid procedure. Again, I would like to thank Houston Engineering for helping us with this project, putting together the plans and the bulk, if you will, of that quote package, and working with me on that. We have provided a memo. I'll be clear, I continue to get the the data practices, private data stuff wrong. So Smith Partners has informed me the quote amounts can be public because it's a request for quotes, not a request for proposals, so always learning.
Oh, sure.
So I will share that.
Makes sense.
I will share that publicly in my discussion here today, and it probably should have been in the board packet. I've since found out. Anyhow, so we did receive interest from 3 contractors. I sent the RFQ package to 14 local contractors, hoping to get some bites this winter. We had a on-site walkthrough on January 27th, and had these 3 contractors all showed up for that, and they did all provide quotes. Sunram Construction came in at $137,085. Rachel Contracting, I'll discuss this in a moment, came in with a primary quote of $128,305, and then an alternate relating with a different plan for control of water at the site with a total price of $98,800. And Pearson Companies came in as written at $76,670.10. Regarding the control of water, it's because we're not doing a drawdown at Freebie Lake, it's a little more difficult to manage. We've been planning for installation of a cofferdam of some kind. The RFQ package wasn't entirely specific about how that could be done. I like to leave a lot of means and methods up to contractors. The kind of default, if you will, would have been installing some steel sheet pile, or could be vinyl. There was some concern voiced by the contractors about the feasibility of doing so due to overhead power lines. So we did encourage or offer contractors the opportunity to submit an alternate plan. And that's why you see the 2 different quotes from Rachel Contracting. Anyway, with that, staff is comfortable with the submittal by Pearson Companies, and recommends that the board would award that project contract to Pearson Companies for the price of $76,670.10. We also would recommend that the board authorize the administrator to engage in change orders up to 10% of that contract amount, or $7,667, as the engineer may deem necessary during construction. And the proposed motion at the bottom of the memo there also notes that that contract approval would be contingent upon advice of counsel, and further that we would not sign the contract until DNR issues our permit amendment to authorize replacement of that structure. I understand that could take place as early as Monday,
Nice.
if all goes well, but hopefully next week. So.
Madam President, forgive me, but would you repeat the numbers again? I got Peterson, never mind, thank you.
Oh.
Nick has them right here in front of me. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion?
Madam Chair, I'd move to authorize the administrator on advice of council and upon DNR's approval of an amendment to DNR permit 1980-6087 to enter into construction contract for the Privy Lake Outlet Replacement Project with Peterson Companies Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $76,670.10. The administrator is further authorized to approve change orders in the amount not to exceed 10% of the original contract, which would be $7,667.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have a question about the easement, but that might not have anything to do with this motion. So,
I can answer that.
so congratulations. There's only one easement. You didn't have to divide it between 2 properties?
Sure. So yeah, so the outlet structure and the pipe that's in place lie within an existing drainage and utility easement that's kind of right along the 2 property lines. And it's, I could go look at the figure, I believe it's, is it 5 feet on the north, on the one side, and 15 feet on the other? It's not quite centered, I think.
Okay.
But all the structure lies within there. The primary route of access for all this construction work is through the property at 2716 Riviera North, which is the owners that we've been working with primarily. So the easement that we've recently obtained, in addition to the old easements that were there, are on just that one property to allow for access through their rear yard.
Oh.
But that does, the access route does utilize a little bit of the existing easement that's on 2710 Riviera North. So there's chain link fence needs to come down, things like that, which will be salvaged and replaced or replaced new at the end of the construction. But we have absolutely been in contact with both homeowners, and they're thrilled this is happening, so.
Wonderful.
Okay, so what you're saying is there was an existing easement, and then in order to do this project, you had to get additional easements
Just for
one of the properties?
Yeah, just to
Okay.
cover the work area.
Just construction easement.
Just-
Okay,
yeah.
I understand now. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Madam President, so that's a temporary work easement, correct?
This is actually a permanent easement.
Permanent?
Yeah, the
All right,
district has
so-
acquired a
all right.
permanent easement from the homeowner for this work and
Sure.
any subsequent
Future.
future work.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, partial transfer of Anoka, Washington ditch number 4. Tom? Morning, Tom.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Morning?
Yes, we can.
Good. Madam President and Board of Managers, the City of Forest Lake has petitioned the district for transfer of a portion of Anoka, Washington JD4 to its authority. And at your meeting on January 12th, 2022, you accepted the petition and appointed Houston Engineering as the engineer, and directed them to prepare a report on the petition. The engineer has completed its report and recommends the transfer of the petition portion of the public drainage system. And per your resolution 22-01, adopted that day, upon receipt of the report and after consultation with you, staff was directed to notice a public hearing. So today we're just consulting with you to confirm that we're setting the public hearing date. So in accordance with our discussion on Monday the 7th at the workshop about the hearing, staff is recommending that the board set a hearing date and time and location of March 9th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. at City of Shoreview, City Hall, with remote participation possible by the public.
Okay, well, why don't we do? Any other questions for Tom, or we can go ahead and set the hearing?
President Preiner? Well, it's certainly fine if the board would like to make a motion. I'll just note that, as Tom said, the past resolution was a little bit different than what we've seen in the past, and it just told staff to come back and consult with you on that date. But please, as the board sees best.
Does anybody
Yes,
see a reason we
thank you.
can't go ahead with it, for hearing that night?
I mean, with what we have already.
March 9th, 6:30?
6:30 here at.
March 9th, 6:30,
at
at
Shoreview.
the location you're at now, at
Yep.
Shoreview.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Okay,
motion necessary.
we don't need a motion, so we're gonna go ahead and schedule that for March 9th. Okay, what else?
Yep.
Go ahead.
President Preiner, yeah, so as Tom noted, then staff will proceed to notice that. I would like just a kind of a sideline comment here, I guess, about this. Anoka, Washington JD4, as you know, has been the subject of some discussion. We cost shared with the city of Forest Lake on a study of that area. This transfer to the city is I guess, at minimum presumed to be based on a developer's intent to move forward with some project. Our study that we cost shared on identified some additional flood storage on the landscape and that sort of thing. But the important point to note is these are separate things. What the city is asking of us does not bind them to do those things. The developer is subject to our regulation. And so these are separate tracks of things that are going on in the area. Just wanted to make that
So
distinction.
this is only about Forest Lake, not developers anyway? That's up to
Correct,
them?
just
Okay.
Forest Lake wants it, this portion of the ditch under their water management authority, and they're not bound to do anything except provide the same level of service, I'll say, that the system currently does, or does, yes.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, we can move into number 5. County Ditch 5362. Nick.
Yes, President Priner, Board of Managers, here's another one of our annual events. This is for the district board to consider the Metro shooting and trost settlements from days gone by and determine what you think of that liability in regards to how it might be represented in the district's financial statements as a portion of your 2021 audit. The board discussed at the workshop, we noted the recent inquiries, yet the district's received no formal proposal for development or otherwise on either of those parcels involved. There's 3 options starting on page 195 of your packet. One carries over onto page 196. At the board workshop, I understood the consensus to be likely option 2, which is on the bottom of page 195. And for your convenience, it would just be a motion in its typical form. I move, and then whichever option would be presumably read into the record.
Okay, and these are not numbered, so make sure that the number 2 is included in the statement. And I think the statement should be read, so whoever would like to make the motion.
Okay, I can do that. Madam President, I move to approve in the matter of Metro shooting trost settlements that we approve option 2, that the Board of Managers finds the triggering of potential contingent future liability to be remote, but nevertheless concludes that it should be referenced in the 2021 financial report as follows, or as modified in the auditor's judgment. And the statement reads, in settlement agreements approved in 2005, the district committed that when development occurs on 2 tracts then owned by the Metro Shooting Center and Trost, the application of the district's wetland rules will not have the result of affording the owner of the Metro shooting parcel fewer than 100 contiguous upland acres for development, and the owner of the Trost parcel no fewer than 45 such acres. If additional wetland replacement is required to allow for consolidation of the stated acreage, the district will bear the cost of that replacement. The district is unable either to determine at this time the likelihood of this potential future contingent liability or to estimate the district expense if and when the liability should arise. I believe that's it.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, check register.
Madam President, I move to approve the check register dated February 9th, 2022 in the amount of $217,876.30 prepared by Redpath and Company.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And we changed our number 1, discussion and information. Nick?
Yes, President Priner, Board of Managers, I'll note that Beth is joining us of district staff for this item. This is in regards to the MOD communication, noting its 2022 legislative event. We handed this out at the workshop. It came that day after we had actually started the meeting. You'll note within the handout you received this morning, it it goes through the different events, notably on the second page, the legislative briefing from 4 to 6, and then from 6 to 8 p.m. the MOD member networking event. And then on Thursday at the Capitol, the breakfast at the Capitol with the legislators, and then from 10 to 4 to meet with legislators, but to make our own meetings. It's my general understanding that the Capitol is dealing with the COVID situation, like much of the public offices and private businesses are, and that it isn't necessarily the case that the legislators are there as we would historically remember them to allow us to move about freely, and appointments would be necessary. I'll go on to note with that that we did have a plan to send out the interests of the districts. In the very last page of that handout you received this morning is kind of a colorful collection of the priorities of MOD. And some of those, we've gone through and as a district made our position known on those, and we could continue to communicate accordingly to certainly the board's action in regards to those, or the intersection of those MOD items in the district board position. So with that, I did not want this to go and us to have a disconnect between the board and staff and make note of it. It was an email. I presume that many of you maybe received this independently. It talks about registering for the event. Teresa has done that for you in the past, and that would be one of the items for us to clarify here. And it's a little bit different again because it's COVID, and whether or not you register directly or we do it collectively, we should have that discussion.
Okay.
Madam President.
Go ahead.
So, Teresa, would you please register me for the breakfast public meeting events? My second question is registration to see the actual representatives in their office. As I understand it, the Senate building is open by appointment, and the state office building where the representatives are is closed. So maybe you'd kind of update me on although this is the MOD event, in the past we've gone to offices after the breakfast or such, and I don't know if that's what the process is. Educate me.
It says schedule your own meeting.
President Preiner, you're correct. It states to schedule your own meetings if you'd like to do that. You know that we have we should be a collective in what we represent to the board, and if individual managers have their alternative opinions based on your policy and procedure, you're to represent that if you go and speak to those folks. I see that Beth has joined us now, and she might share with you what our intent was to date until this just recently came out. MOD initially had noted this as a virtual meeting, and so we're just wanting to make sure we're all swimming in the same direction. If you would entertain what Beth might share.
Yes, please enlighten us.
Well, I'll tell you what, I just was getting my enlightening this morning. So, as Nick said, it was our understanding, we had it on our calendar that this was going to be a virtual event. And so I just found out this morning that they were moving into an in-person breakfast. And so really I'm looking to all of you to see, initially we were going to kind of take information that was coming out of our annual report. We pushed up our deadline so that we would have that information in early February of this year, or mid-February, excuse me. and we were going to send them some highlights and priorities of the district in particular, because we weren't necessarily advocating for any significant legislation that they're considering right now. Now that they're doing an in-person breakfast and meeting, I'm wanting to get feedback from all of you to see if we should send a communication out next week with the invitation to join us, if there's any priorities we want them to consider, or if we, just kind of want to, provide that information on who we are, that we're a trusted resource. The communications I'm getting from legislators, they have a very full agenda, and the priorities are very youth related and COVID related, healthcare related. They're not looking at a ton of other issues right now. There are some climate change things that they're considering and looking at. So kind of put that back on all of you. This would normally be something that we address at a workshop, but it kind of just came fairly quickly. And looking to you for direction as to how I can best represent you with communications to the legislature.
Well, personally, I would think that you could put together something and send it to our direct representatives, legislators, because I've been at breakfasts, and many have, but there's not very many that attend. And I think we'd have more impact by sending it out ahead and saying, this is because of this program, or because of this event, we're sending it. And if they're going to be there, we'd kind of like to know it. We'd like to be there and talk to them. But if we get all rejections that nobody's going to be there anyway, then it's kind of fruitless.
So how many people are we talking about? How many representatives and senators represent the
We have
watershed?
28.
28.
We have 28 that represent all our portions, or that represent portions within the watershed district. A large number of them have a portion of their district in our watershed and a portion outside of our watershed.
Okay, and are you thinking of, for the 50th anniversary celebration, were you thinking of something specifically for legislators?
We were, because of COVID and what we had heard and were anticipating, everything was going to be kind of sent to them.
Yeah.
So they were going to get, we were going to set a special packet that recognized our 50 years and spoke to it, but then highlighted 2021 achievements and 2022 priorities. That document, while we're in the works of that, I don't know that I can turn it around in time to send it out to promote this event. Okay. So what I would propose, and President Preiner is right, we do this every year, and we feel pretty fortunate if we get, one or two to come and another 3 or 4 to respond to us. So we've been taking a different role in that we've been, really curating and being careful of what we send to them, and kind of introducing ourselves to all of our legislators, and then kind of sending them information about us, so that we have an existing relationship when we need to approach them on an issue, but not overwhelming them or barraging them.
Right.
So what I would propose, kind of based on what you're all saying and what I'm hearing, is within the next week or 10 days, I can put together a communication to our legislators that gives some high-level updates about the watershed district. If you guys have a real specific thing you want me to advocate for, please let me know. And then we'll let them know about this breakfast and ask them to RSVP or communicate with us if they're going to be there. So they'll get this first kind of communication from us. If someone is going to be at the breakfast, we'll do the full court press of creation of materials for them for that event. But aside from someone coming to the breakfast, we'll go ahead and proceed with creating information that we have coming out of our 50th year, out of our annual report, and then sending each legislator kind of a packet from us in the next month or so. That's just a general reminder of who we are, the successes that we have, the priorities that we have, making sure they know that they can reach out to us if they have a concern. That's been very, very successful. We do get legislators that reach out to us directly when they hear something or have a concern.
Steve had a question. Excuse me.
Well, my point was, I guess, I agree that letter would be the most important part of the whole thing, because one thing, a month in the COVID world, even, we have no idea a month from now what'll actually be going on. It could be completely different than the situation is now, so we really don't have any idea. So I think the letter part is the very most important part, and the rest will be in flux till it happens.
Yeah. Jeff?
So, Madam President, I've attended these breakfasts for years. And you're correct, some days, some breakfast mornings is hardly anybody there. And I've been there where there's people standing in line to get in the chairs when it was in that hotel across the street. I remember one particular year I was there when I listened to a fellow named Sorensen, I think that's his correct name, over at the University of Minnesota, talk about carp and how they were kind of like salmon and they ran back and forth and how you could catch them. And I don't believe any of our legislators were there, even though the room was packed and we had all kinds of people, you know, there. And so that particular day, I took went over and grabbed the administrator by the arm at the table he was sitting at and said, "Go talk to this man. I want him to come here to the district," and we developed our CARP program from that. So even though maybe our legislators aren't sitting in the room at the time, sometimes the presentations that are given and the other legislators that are very important on the committees are there. And so you have an opportunity to see them. So I would encourage everyone to attend any in-person meeting, even though there might not be anyone. That you have to take that chance. And Beth, I take it we're not having two in-person meetings, just the one in the Capitol that they're talking about, the breakfast, not the afternoon get-together?
Correct. They're just doing the breakfast. They discontinued the afternoon one, I think, even before COVID. I think because of attendance, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
So they're just going to do the breakfast one this year.
Just to clarify that, for what MODA has sent out, if you look at, let's see, it would be the second, well, the bottom of the first page talks about the MOD administrators meeting and then the board of directors of MOD, but top of that next page there, they have that legislative briefing, which I would believe would be similar to what they suggest to be the interaction or the format of how to interact with our elected representatives, and then a networking event of MOD. So not to correct Beth in any ways, I just wanted to be clear about what was available.
But these are at the downtown Hilton Hotel.
Yep,
St. Paul.
something different.
They're in the hotel
Yep.
themselves. And I remember the last time we were there was a snowstorm, and so no one came down to visit it. It was pretty sparse. But that's basically for members. It's not necessarily for the legislature to attend it. Isn't that correct?
Correct. I just didn't want a
Yes,
misunderstanding and someone to miss an opportunity.
So they're not going to be speaking anyway. That's not for them to be speaking.
Correct. That's. I imagine it might be similar to a Metro Mod meeting or something like that. Yep.
Yeah, I've listened to that, how to raise their salaries, yeah.
Okay, everybody
So they
understand?
used to have the breakfast that they're having this year, and Manager Waller is correct. At one point, they also had like an evening, almost like a happy hour, so that legislators could pick one or the other, and they canceled, they quit having the afternoon one, and are just encouraging watershed districts to just reach out directly to their legislators for private meetings if they need them.
So, Madam Chair, for managers, we have an opportunity to attend Wednesday a MAUD meeting, which includes a legislative briefing and then an opportunity to network with other watershed managers at the hotel. And then the next morning, there's an in-person breakfast at the Capitol with legislators, and then they have the afternoon open for us to meet one-on-one with legislators, should any of those choose. So, Teresa, is it, you register for the, you would register us for the whole event?
Manager Wynant,
Yes.
if I may, the purpose of the afternoon meeting with legislators is, from what I understand, really more important for watershed managers, watershed district managers, and staff that are not in the metro area.
Yes.
For folks that are coming
Yes.
down from, Bemidji or Grand Rapids or
Yeah.
Marshall, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't have the opportunity necessarily like we all do to have other time. So that afternoon really I think is maybe less important for all of you because you have more flexibility should we need to go see our legislators.
And it's individual scheduling, so
Right.
Yeah.
you can
Right.
do it for any time.
Yeah, and for that matter, we could, there's any number of ways that we as a watershed district can communicate with our legislators, as in set up a couple of Zoom call times where we would present, and those legislators that are interested and available could hop online. Because I'm understanding from several folks that, at least on the House side, it's still all remote. And remote with appointments. Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I would go so far as to say if we don't have any in those years that we don't have like a burning issue that we're really trying to advocate or push for, the legislative season is probably one of the worst times to try to just reach out to them. I feel like we've done a good job of every time we have a new legislator, we've set up an appointment outside of the legislative session to introduce ourselves to them, to do a presentation on who we are and what our priorities are. And so, unless something kind of big comes up, or if all of you have an overriding priority, really just keeping in contact, letting them know we're here, providing them some information that they can have during the legislative session, and then really contacting them and working with them outside of the legislative session is probably the better avenue.
I would agree.
Because they're busy now, so unless we have something to ask, we
Stay out of the
probably
way.
don't want to take too much of their time.
Yes, don't poke the bear.
Okay, so everybody understands it. Teresa knows she'd book it if anybody wants it, and they can contact her. District engineer update. Anything new? Chris?
Madam President, I don't have anything specific to address, but certainly can answer any questions.
Any questions? None? Okay. Administrator updates.
President Priner, Board of Managers, I'll just note, met with longtime resident Perry Wagaman, and Manager Wagaman was there. He has an interest, obviously, in an Oak County Ditch 102232, but I don't want to steal anybody's thunder either, so thank you much.
Anything else? That was no more updates? Okay.
I just asked, where are we at with the COVID numbers? All 3 counties are still high?
President Priner, Board Manager Wynant, yes, that's my understanding that why is it escaping me? The contagious rate is still at its highest level for the counties in which the district is. And that was our reason for off-site and such.
Yeah.
Remote.
Watch that with interest.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes because everybody's changing everything, so we want to make sure we're watching what's going on. Okay, anything else? Go ahead, Steve?
I did have a couple things. Nick mentioned that we had that meeting yesterday, and I was going to bring up the same thing just to bring the managers up to date. But piggybacking on that, I'm wondering if I could have the administrator maybe put on for a next board workshop, if it's possible. I feel like we're getting at a point where I'd like to talk to the rest of the managers about what's my proper involvement in this, and just make sure everybody's comfortable with how that's going and what should be proper.
Okay, that's good. Go ahead, Nick.
Yes, President Freiner, Manager Wegman, I can certainly put that on there. The way you stated the interests there, probably be good to have one of the district's attorneys present. Is that
Probably.
Yeah,
yeah.
And it, much about affirming, maybe, just to be clear of that sort of thing. Okay,
Well, we
very
just
good.
want to make sure there's no stepping over the line on conflict of
Yeah, I'd
interest,
like
Yeah.
to be
you know.
Yep.
crystal clear on everything with all the managers and everybody, make sure no lines are crossed or,
Yeah, it'd be easier than having the accusations afterwards.
yeah.
Certainly. Yeah, I think where we're at in the process, we could probably do that and I'm looking at Mr. Otterness as I say this, at the March workshop without complicating our schedule. If I could, I'll speak freely. Our next step is to get the board to initiate the proceedings again on 10/22/32 and go from there. Am I recalling that correctly, Chris?
Yeah, Madam President, Mr. Tomczyk, yes, the next step would be to essentially schedule a resumption of the hearing related to the as constructed subsequently improved conditions. So I think that would be appropriate to consider a date, setting a date at that workshop, and then, or at least discussing the setting of a date there, and then be ready to have the kind of the final chapter of that records correction process.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Marcy?
I have nothing.
John?
Well, I attended the Washington County Consortium meeting on first Wednesday of the afternoon this month, and the health department was there, and they were giving a presentation, two ladies did, about our favorite chemical, PFAS and PFOS. And they provided a slide during the show of where they found this chemical, and of course I had always had the idea that it was kind of limited to some areas, but as we've listened to this story over the number of years, and this, I'll just kind of give a brief description. It went from like 5 acres in a dump in Washington County to the next thing it was some more acres around, and of course the city of Oakdale has carbon filters on all their city water. And the next thing we heard was, well, it was 100 square miles south of Highway 36, and it's in Lake St. Croix, and of course, most recently we heard that it's up in Clear Lake. And so they showed a map there, and instead of it having like a handful or 2 handfuls of dots on it, there's just a whole bunch of red all the way around the metropolitan area, up to the Mississippi River. And it turns out in their presentation that this particular chemical is used in many manufacturing facilities, and not just at the 3M facility itself. The product is sold and other ones used. And so that came a curious thing to me, because I had just read an article the day before about a beef farmer in Michigan who lives on the Hudson River. And the Department of Natural Resources in Michigan, I'm had done, with the Department of Michigan Health, has done some studies of the fish, which is similar to what happens up there at Clear Lake or at Lake St. Croix. And they discovered this chemical, PFAS and PFOS particularly, in the fish. And so they started tracing it back a little bit more, and they came to a town called Wixon, W-I-X-O-N, and their municipal sewer system. And as their investigation went on, they discovered it in this beef farmer's beef tissue. So he's marketing his own beef and he follows all the health regulations. But here he has PFAS in the tissue. Well, the health department not only then decided to go out and take a look at the farm, and then they found it in the manure, and then they found it in the soils, and then they found it in all the feed he's using to feed the cattle. And it turns out that this fellow had been participating in a program, which is perfectly legitimate, nothing nefarious here, of picking up the sludge from the Wixon wastewater treatment plant and putting it on the soils. And by God, that's a pretty standard practice here in Minnesota. A lot of it. And so suddenly when I read that, I thought, I don't think it's necessarily the airport and the fire department that caused Clear Lake, which was inferred in a local article. It could be just as well. We've been doing this for 30 years. And I remember at home in the 70s, when this program came around and it was talked about it, I had a discussion with my dad operating the farm whether we should get this lime treatment and put on the farm. And my sister, who was a soil scientist at the University of Minnesota, undergraduate study at the time, just gave me a chewing. Told me, I said, don't you dare do that, blah, 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 for saving a few dollars. So I have never done it at home, but I know of neighbors that have at times. And the other part that comes to me about this is that, if you go out and buy some hay commercially, or you go out and buy some soybeans or soybean meal or corn, it could very well be in there, and then it gets into your livestock or your production anyway around. So I brought that topic up to the ladies because they didn't mention it. And they said, oh yeah, we know all about that. And there are no standards that have been developed for external use by the Ag Department or by the Federal Environmental Pollution Agency. So they're working on that. As the things go along, as you find it more and more and more, the regulatory action will come in. So I found that of some interest. And I presented that information, of course, when they asked me if I had anything at the advisory committee to add to the story. As far as the advisory committee goes, we did review all of those applications today. And I heard, as I said earlier, the staff had been very diligent and very responsible in finding places for these requests for funding to be that fit. So it might not necessarily be eligible under this program, but you folks should have applied over here. We have funds and such. And I want to commend them. I thought that the presentation by Kyle was excellent. And the idea in my mind is to see the money go out the door back to the taxpayer for the improvement of flood controls and water quality. And I think that's, but the staff making an extra effort, not just saying, you're not eligible, go away, I didn't see that done, that's what I'm saying. I am seeing the staff did a very good job. And they were rated up by the advisory committee, and we'll take a look at what they have to say and what the results are at the next meeting. And then let's see, is there anything else I wanted to mention? Oh, I got that. I think that that's all I had on to talk about. That's enough anyways.
The only thing I have, now that we're talking about these chemicals, John, the Rabine property down from which is probably 2-3 miles from my house, when they used to spread that manure,
Yeah.
It was, I mean, we'd get physically sick if you're outside.
Yeah,
So it's toxic.
I
And there's a
don't,
lot of new houses sitting on there, so I hope everything was done properly.
I
And
don't,
that was
I-
wastewater.
Yeah, they would get it from.
Oh, you
because they would
could-
get a contract and they could
sure.
put it out and put
The
it on their fields.
the gimmick was you don't have to buy the lime out of the pit, you can get it here, and you only have to pay for the trucking. And yes, Madam President, I agree with you about that. I've seen it put on so thick that once it hardened, chisel plows needed a lot of horsepower. But it was an acceptable practice done for decades, and it's only now that we're understanding the implications of it and the hazard that is there. And I think that this is a far widespread situation, and what you're saying is what seems to be is that stormwater running off that land could just spread that everywhere, and
For years.
years, and it's so. Anyways, well, it's a new exciting regulatory area.
Well, not exciting, but. All right, we need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
A second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
I will be remote next Wednesday,
2 weeks.
2 weeks.